What's up guys, this is Kaz with ELEVATEYOURCRAFT and welcome to episode number 2 of the vlog. Today's workout was a jump rope workout, and I tend to split my routines into either conditioning or a skill development, and today happened to be skill development. And the trick that I'm working on currently is the front back crossover, which is essentially a crossover, however one arm is in front of the body and the other is behind the back. And it's going fairly well. I can do it proficiently on one side, however the other side not so much. But that's pretty common to have a weaker side and a dominant side, especially when it comes to tricks like this. I personally don't like not being able to do a trick proficiently on both sides, so I tend to put a lot of extra time into bringing the weaker side up to par. But in general, the skill development days are a lot slower. It's really not about bringing my heart rate up, it's more about breaking down technique and really micromanaging it to figure out what I need to do to achieve the trick. So where are my hands? Where do they need to be? How's the rope reacting to where my hands are? And most of the time, I'm not even jumping. I like to practice a trick or technique extensively without jumping first in order to build a foundation. And then once I reach a level of proficiency that I'm comfortable with, I'll start to implement the jumping part of it. The topic that I wanted to talk about today relative to rope is jump rope length. Early on in my training, I tended to brute force a lot of what I was doing, which I think made things a bit more difficult and frustrating than they needed to be, which isn't all bad because it did bring me to where I am today. However, one of the main contributing factors was rope length, and that's because I really didn't understand it. I didn't take into account with the ropes I was using. So rope length can be a bit difficult to manage, especially if you don't own a rope of your own. If you go to a gym, for example, a lot of the time the ropes there are non-adjustable. So right from the get-go, if it's not suited to your height, then you're at a disadvantage. In episode number 14 of the podcast, I go over some general guidelines on the rope length you want to use based on your height. So I really encourage you to check that out. The ideal way to go, I think, is using an adjustable rope because you can really fine-tune it to your height, and it just gives you a bit more flexibility. At the end of the vlog, I'll be demonstrating a trick that you can use in order to, number one, test out a rope just to kind of see where it sits. So if it's a non-adjustable rope, for example, you can take it and use this trick to say, you know what, this rope's a bit too short, or, you know, it happens to be good for my height, or it's too long. But you can also use this trick to measure out a new adjustable rope. That way you can really figure out where you need to cut it, and then away you go. But just a couple more things relative to rope length. It really affects your technique, and progression within rope is already hard enough. So what we want to do is make sure that the conditions are as favorable as possible from the start. So a couple things to look out for is if a rope is too long, a lot of time what it'll do is it'll make a lot of contact with the ground. We don't want the rope to make much contact with the ground. Ideally, it should just be skimming the surface. But a rope that's too long will often smack the ground, it'll bounce, often causing catches and that kind of thing. Another thing that we tend to do if we're using a rope that's too long is bring our hands up in order to kind of compensate for that length. But then all you're doing is really modifying your technique, and it's just not ideal anymore, and you'll really develop some bad habits down the line that will be much harder to get rid of. If a rope is too short, often it'll go a bit quicker than we can anticipate, or you simply just won't be able to jump over the rope. You kind of hunch in order to get your body through. So really just modifications to the technique that, again, aren't ideal. So you want to make sure that you are using a rope that's suitable for your height. And again, I encourage you to check out episode number 14 of the podcast for some rope guidelines. And here's a demonstration on how you can use this trick to, one, test out a rope to see where it sits, and then two, to measure out a new adjustable rope to figure out where you need to cut it to get your suitable rope length. What's up guys? So now I want to demonstrate that trick that I mentioned in the vlog to, number one, measure out a rope to really see where it sits relative to your height, or number two, you can also use this trick to measure out an adjustable rope that you might have purchased. So first thing you want to do is take the rope handles and align the ends. So you want to make sure that they're even. And then take the middle of the rope and then place it under one of your feet. And then the opposite hand to the foot that the rope is under, you want to take that hand and then bring the rope up to your shoulders. So you want to make sure that there's no slack in the rope, and you want the ends of the handles to reach shoulder length, okay? So if it's under shoulders, the top of your shoulders, then the rope might be a bit too short. If it goes above shoulders, the shoulder length, then it's a bit too long. Now, this particular rope is a long-handled rope, and I usually hold the ropes or the handles pretty low, so I made them go slightly above shoulder length in order to compensate for that. But as a general guideline, you want the handles to reach the top of the shoulders. Okay, so hopefully this trick is useful, and be sure to follow on Facebook. I'm at Elevate Your Craft, all one word. You can find me on Twitter under EYCKAS, and also under Instagram under the same handle. The website is www.elevateyourcraft.net.